Hey everybody, and welcome to Honeybee Entertainment. I'm your Coach B, and today I wanted to take a minute to talk about Overwatch 2's 6v6 minimum maximum. Now this is their newest 6v6 experience, and overall it's kind of a culmination of a few different things. It's another 6v6 format, as I already said, but this introduces a soft lock queue, similar to the Kingmaker game mode that we tried out a while ago. So what it means is that it's minimum 1, maximum 3. So you're always going to have one of every role represented, but how they choose to split that up will be game to game and decided by the team. Now, the idea of this is that it gives you the ability to switch roles mid-game still, normally, as I'll go into in a minute here, but it makes sure that you're never going to end up with a complete open queue situation where you have 6 tanks or 6 supports, whatever it might be. So overall, like I said, there's kind of a soft lock to it, but you're not necessarily going to be able to play what you want because of that. So it's split up into a few different, if we split up the roles, it's going to be either a 3-1-2, a 1-3-2, a 2-1-3, however you want to split it up. So I would say the most popular ones that I was seeing was the typical 2-2-2, 2 tanks, 2 DPS, 2 supports, or the other one that I saw to be very popular as I was playing was 3 tanks, 1 DPS, 2 supports. So, and I guess the last one that I saw a lot was 1-3-2. 1 tank, 3 DPS, 2 support. But I found that team comp in particular normally changed mid-game to a 2-2-2 or to a 1-2-3. Which would bring me up to my next one, which would be having 3 supports. That typically would just lose out to a 2-2-2 or a 3-1-2. So it definitely seems that just because you can stack more supports, seeing as you're always going to have one, it's best to not overload it, which would be my last point that I kind of saw as far as team comps go. Typically, you were not having a team with 1 support, just because that's a lot, especially if they have multiple supports. They have a higher sustain overall, and thus you are kind of penalized by your lack of healing. So it would seem that the community kind of already wants to lean towards a very set type of thing. Like I said, the 2-2-2, which is the standard format that it's been for the 6v6 role queue, did seem to come out pretty frequently. But I did see some pressure in chat for the 3-1-2, having a 3rd tank. Now, the 3-1-2 feels, it feels the best, I would say, as far as just like everyone feels like they have enough support, enough agency. The DPS can struggle at times, but the idea is that 3rd tank is able to become the 2nd DPS, and their job is to, still perform some of the tank role, staying with the team, whatever it might be, but they're really going out and they're just acting like a big, beefy DPS. So, how did I feel? What were my kind of conclusions from all of this? I would say that similarly to what I had talked about in my first 6v6 video, a lot of the same issues are presented, or I shouldn't say issues, but differences between 6v6 and 5v5. They become perhaps even more apparent in this game mode. The fact that stagger is far more likely to happen with an extra person, and depending on your team comp, let's say you have the 3 tanks, you're frequently going to have a situation where somebody lasts a lot longer than everyone else on the team. So even with the wave respawn, they're coming in behind. which means the rest of the team is holding up, waiting, and people get impatient. I mean, that's people get impatient. And they're like, I want to do something. I want to do something. And so, really, they needed to wait 5-10 more seconds. But that's a long time. That's a really long time in Overwatch, and people want to just go. So stagger, even more apparent, I would say. And with that in mind, though, the agency of every player is much higher. The impact of losing a duel can play a big impact on the team fight as a whole. So with the stagger and the more impact that a single player can have, it ends up that kind of, I would say, was one of the big issues with this. And the other one kind of along that line would be that game modes like the hybrid payload maps felt a lot like old 2CP to me, in the fact that it's a long run back to the point from the defender's spawn. Pretty short distance for the attackers from spawn to get to the point. So it more or less felt like those were kind of a hold until either, they get a pick that allows them to kind of get in the door, or they just get the team kill, whatever it might be. Kind of felt like that first point normally just was you were holding it until everything fell apart, and then you ended up you would have to reset behind, just give them the point. Similar to, like I said, original 2 capture point. Now, those would be kind of my general thoughts on the differences, but I would say overall, I think that the 6v6 role queue is better. It's more balanced overall. You know what you're going to get. Everyone can choose what they want before the game, and it's kind of easier to make ideas in the fact that if you're playing tank, you have another tank, and you have 2 supports and 2 DPS. Easy. Whereas in this game mode, you could be 1 tank and you have 3 DPS and 2 supports, and you're like, okay, is this a situation where I need to actually make space? Or am I going to just blow up if I try to make space here, and I'm going to become a detriment to my team? You're not sure where the synergy with the tank is. I'm playing a main tank, an engager, but I can't engage in this team comp, whatever it might be. So I kind of think it's easier to just understand the roles and the role queue setting. But, of course, with this, you can choose what you want after you see the map. So you're not forced to choose something. You're able to play around a map rather than wanting to play a role. So I think I would compare it overall to 5v5 open queue in how it plays. You can have really good games, and mostly everyone's going to get to play what they want. I've kind of said that a couple of times because, again, it is a minimum 1 and a maximum 3, so you're always going to have somebody that maybe they wanted to play tank, but they were the last one to choose a character, and it turned out that there's 3 tanks and 2 DPS already. So they're playing support. So you're normally able to get what you want, and you're able to go off of a map or the game or however you're feeling. But with all of that, you're kind of giving into the unbalance that can come with not having a equal or optimal team composition. So let's see here. I think that kind of... I guess the last thing I would want to do is... I'd already brought it up. And kind of to compare this game mode to the Kingmaker game mode that we had got to play a couple of tests ago. So, again, it's the similar soft lock that they introduced with the Kingmaker, but Kingmaker had a stricter soft lock in the fact that after you chose your role and the game started, you were forced into that role and you couldn't switch mid-game. But it still let people choose what they wanted depending on the map. Of course, you could get pushed into a role you didn't want, just like this. But I think I liked the Kingmaker more. It felt good to be alone. You didn't feel like you had to perform, like just because you had the extra boosts from the Kingmaker being the king, it didn't make you feel like you had to perform. And I don't feel like you have to perform in min-max when you're alone on your role. Like, there's not pressure, but it's just harder to do your job. I would say, except for DPS. Being alone on DPS more or less feels the same, just because you're still able to find the holes to make your engagements work, and you're able to take space, and you're not really changing how the DPS plays at all. Whereas one tank versus 3 tanks, the tank has to change a lot about their gameplay loop. So those are just some general thoughts. Nothing super conclusive overall. I did enjoy it. Like I said, there seemed to be a lot of good matches, but there also were a lot of upsets. I felt like if there's a bad team comp, if you are playing suboptimal and the other team is playing a great team comp, you're going to get run over, and people are going to have to swap off of things they want to play if they want to win. And so that leads me back to my opinion that role queue 6v6 is just better. People know what they're going to get, and they get to play what they want. We're not playing something fancy, and I think that this could be better than a 6v6 open queue. I would prefer this to 6v6 open queue. But compared to 6v6 role queue, if I had to choose one over the other, I would definitely choose 6v6 role queue. Yep, that's it. Those are all my thoughts, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, any ideas, general perspective, let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you later. Ciao.